Welcome to My Creative Corner 3, a podcast about quilting, crafting, creativity, with a dash of garden, chatting about current interests and life in my northern town. You can find show notes at mycreativecorner3.com. You can also find all of my social media, how to purchase a virtual cup of coffee, and all events on the website. Please feel free to stop by and leave a comment. I really appreciate everyone who listens. Thanks for stopping by. Welcome to the podcast. Hello, everyone. It is September 21st. It's a mystery of a podcast. Where have I been? What have I been making? What have I been doing? And have I, in fact, fallen off the face of the earth? You'll find out all of those answers of our next little bit of a chat. So first things first, the big mystery. I have been so busy since I talked to you last at the end of July. I've never taken that much time off since I started podcasting. But number one, I needed a break. I was tired and summer was winding up for me. I have been all over this country. We did our epic road trip. I've been to quilt shows. I went to Quilt Town. I have been sewing, crocheting, and a little bit of cross stitch. And I'll catch you up on all of those things. So the first thing is I went to a quilt show in Grand Rapids, and it was in the end of July. It's an AQS show, very large show. If you've not gone, I think it's fun to go, to be inspired, look for trends, and to spend the day with people that you love and enjoy their company. I got to go with my parents. My husband drove us down. He decided to not attend a Highland game because he just wanted to be healthy and rest up before our epic road trip. So he drove my parents and I down to Grand Rapids. It was AQS Quilt Week, August 24th, I believe. We went the last day on a Saturday. And it was the busiest I've ever seen AQS on a Saturday. I think it's one of those things that if you haven't gone in a while, go. They've changed how they do things a little bit. I was so thrilled with one of the winners was from Japan, and it was all hand quilted. It was exquisite. It's everything that I noticed was on trend. Florals are on trend. This had just amazing work on it. I think it was some applique, circles. The quilting was hand quilted tiny feathers with perfect stitches, hand done. Amazing. Another one of the winners was a pictorial quilt, and that is another thing that I saw on trend. It was lilies, and they are so good that it looks like you could just pick them. They are pink, and the flowers were just exquisitely detailed with fabric. It was probably hand dyed in specific types of techniques that I don't know much about. Applique, but the quilting also was amazing. The overall winner, I wasn't super duper impressed with because it was the typical thing that AQS does, and they, it's almost like a Baltimore album quilt. It was a lot of applique, tiny micro stitching for the quilting part. It was all right. The modern quilts were not my favorite at all. I've decided that I am not a modern quilter. I didn't like the color palettes. They were boring. And I'm just kind of decided to just really call myself what I am, a contemporary quilter. I like making the blocks that are kind of based in the past. I like making block-based quilts and modern contemporary colors. I've embraced it and I've quit fighting the bit, shall we speak. But I did like a lot of contemporary quilts. There were several that were just amazing. And let me tell you about more trends that I saw. The raw edge applique was hot. There was a lot of tiny applique. There was a lot of contemporary block quilts that I just love, with bright, bold, fresh colors of deep saturated red, yellow primaries, red, yellow, blue, green, purples. Tiny is also in. I saw a double wedding ring that was micro pieced. It was so tiny. There was a lot of digitally planned quilts. There was one that I really loved. It had to be machine quilted. It was very large. It had amazing computer themed, like, do you enjoy life was the question. And it was on the screen of a laptop, and it showed somebody thinking in the next area. And the whole background was massively quilted with, like, DNA merging with computer code. Very thought-provoking. Lots of thought-provoking quilts. The other thing is, I loved the people who were from Japan. They had amazing quilts. My dad fell in love with all of their quilts too. They may not have the brightest of colors. A lot of them were pastel, but they were very detail-oriented. One of my favorites are the hexies with applique on top and tiny stitching. But I am a bold color girl. I am. I am very bold. But one of the quilts that I absolutely 100% fell in love with was a raw edge applique Abraham Lincoln. And it was called Influencer. And I need to look up who made it. One moment. Caroline Stout. Go look her up. The Abe Lincoln is a classic Abe Lincoln, right? He's raw edge applique, I think. I'm not 100%. It is more contemporary. Foundation paper piecing, I think, in parts. But Abe Lincoln is an influencer looking into a mirror, taking a selfie with a cell phone in his hand. Probably an iPhone. I'm an Android user, but I have a work iPhone that I'm not well used. I absolutely fell in love with that one. I forgot to take a picture of it. I was heartbroken because I loved it so much, and my dad took a picture of it. Remember, my dad's a photographer, so he goes into these shows with the eye of someone with photographer training. So if you want to see these quilts, go ahead and head over to my Instagram account, which is Vicki L. Holloway. And I took a lot of pictures. And a lot of things that I'm going to talk about is on Instagram posted and Facebook, which is, basically, I post the same thing on both. So go to a quilt show. It was incredibly inspiring. I didn't buy a thing. Cherrywood Fabrics wasn't there, but their Monarch Butterfly Challenge, oh my gosh, the saga of that. Did you see it? UPS lost the shipment. And so when the show opened, the Monarch Butterfly mini quilts were not there for the Monarch Challenge. I was so disappointed. My mom and I were like, oh, that's one of our favorite parts. They have specials there that are always fun to look at. One of them is the Cherrywood Challenge. There was International Quilters there too. They had a Ukrainian section, a display, which had the Ukrainian straw weaving incorporated quilts. That was amazing too. But anyway, the Monarch quilts were there. They found part of the shipment. I don't know if all of them were there, but we saw many of them, and they were absolutely stunning. So beautiful. So those kinds of things were very, very inspiring to me. And then I was able to come home and work on a few things and kind of feel like, maybe I can get this together here and start making some progress, because I've been feeling like I've been moving very slowly over the last year and trying to rehab myself, getting stronger and stronger, and mentally trying to get over, I don't know, maybe like a mental block of creativity from the last COVID infection I had. And this long COVID every once in a while just rears its ugly head and kicks my butt. So let's move into the vacation. That started Labor Day weekend. Well, I'm not going to tell you everywhere we went and bore you with my 2-week vacation, but you can certainly see my almost daily posts of the vacation. We went 4,400 miles in a road trip. Yep, we hit 5 national parks. And I would encourage you, if you can, get a national parks pass, whether you're a retiree, a veteran. They have special rates, I know, for lots of people, or if you're planning on making a trip. It was so worth it. It saved us a lot of money, and the national parks are really some of our national treasures. They were amazing. I will tell you some of the national parks that we went. We went to the Great Sand Dune National Park on our way to see the Four Corners area. National parks are always well done. They have places that are handicap accessible. They make it to where there's usually nice facilities where you can go to the bathroom and get information. Parking is always a challenge. So I'm going to say you need to check. If you need a timed ticket to get in, make sure you do your homework and get your timed ticket. Even if you have a National Parks Pass, you still need a timed ticket to get in. So once we left there, we went through Wolf Creek Pass. We drove, remember, all the way from Michigan. I forgot to tell you the start of our trip. We decided to take the Great Lakes Ferry from Muskegon to Milwaukee. Number one, it was Chicago or the UP on Labor Day weekend. Absolutely terrible traffic. I'm telling you, we've done it before. So we opted to pay a lot of money to go across the lake for the wonderful experience of riding the catamaran. Now, 40 years ago, 35 years ago, when I first became a nurse, my daughter and I moved to Wisconsin with my husband, who'd already had our place picked out, but we didn't have a car. So rather than have family drive me all the way across, we rode the old Badger, it's called, and it leaves from Ludington, Michigan to Manitowoc. It still does that particular journey. It's a 100-year-old boat, and my daughter clearly remembers it at 4 years old. It was huge. It was massive. It was from, the early 1900s, and it didn't have all the comfort features, even though the antiqueness of it was in wood, and the chairs and all that were very quaint. The modern ferry is definitely the way to go. Now back to national parks. Once we left Great Sand Dunes, we did go to Mesa Verde, which is in the Four Corners area, which has cliff dwellings. And on the way there, we took the wonderful Durango to Silverton train, which is an 8-hour train ride all the way up the mountains and down for views that you can't get with driving. I have some spectacular pictures. It was a wonderful meditative experience, and I would do it again. Now, if you can't do 8 hours in a train, they do have a bus that will drive you back, but we chose to do the 8-hour train. We saw lovely things on the way. So our next stop was Moab, Utah. We went to, of course, Arches National Park. We did some evening sky watching, stargazing, and sunset pictures there. And then we went back the next day for the full car ride. And then we realized we had enough time, and people along the way told us to go to Canyonlands National Park, which is just down the road, and view Bucks Canyon. Oh my goodness. That was the hidden gem. Arches was fantastic. Mesa Verde was fantastic. But the Canyonlands was, I think, by far one of our favorite moments in the trip. My husband is a truck driver, so all the driving and mountain driving is fantastic for him. It's a challenge. We turned the radio off and just enjoyed. So after that, we decided we wanted to get to a Highland game in Estes Park on a Saturday. So we drove from Moab across the Rocky Mountains to pick up one of the entry points to the High Ridge Trail in Rocky Mountain National Park. So Google, we have been taken some, interesting ways before on Google, and Google took us on a lovely path that ended up being about 20 miles on a wide, well-maintained dirt mining road, but we saw the headwaters of the Colorado River and learned all about history, looked up history all along the way. I did find out, though, that when we get above the tree line, like at Mesa Verde, it was a little scary and hairpin turns are tight, and our car worked so hard and it was a champ. So when we got to the Sky, was it Sky or is it called? No, it's the High Ridge Trail. Jay warned me, my husband, that it does go up above the tree line. And I knew I was going to be a little nervous. So it went up to, I think, 10,000 feet. So amazing. It's beautiful, pristine views of the Rocky Mountains. I just can't describe it. You have to experience it. Pictures don't even do it justice. It's just so fantastic. Our country has some diverse and amazing views, from the sand dunes, which were taller than mountains in Colorado, to these majestic mountain vistas. It was amazing. We saw a moose laying down. We saw an abundance of elk and birds and all kinds of animals. We even saw pronghorn in Pueblo. So we did go to the Highland game, saw our friend Emily set a women's world record in Sheaf. We attended the festival. We listened to music. My husband found the Livingston clan, which is the clan he wears a kilt for. And I was looking for, they had one of the clans that is in my family, but the one that's probably the closest relative, that clan was not there. But that's okay. We had an amazing day and saw elk walking in downtown and laying in Estes Park. Estes Park was not what I was expecting it to be. It's small, but it's picturesque and beautiful. And that was all of the stops that we did on the national parks. Then we spent time in Colorado Springs. We did drive to the top of Pikes Peak, a harrowing experience, but my husband wanted the challenge instead of riding the cog train up. He loved a driving challenge. He was an amazing driver. It was wonderful. Again, scary around hairpin turns at the top. It is hard on your car, though. I would not recommend driving to the top. I'm not sure that our car has fully survived without having to have some maintenance. We knew we would need brakes by the time this trip was done, but man, oh man, it needs brakes now. So all of that, I asked for 2 stops on the trip, and we chose to do them at the end. One is we accidentally stayed in Liberty, Missouri on the way across. And I told my husband, I said, oh my goodness, that's Angela Walters' quilt shop is here. And he goes, didn't you interview her on your podcast? And I said, a long time ago, I sure did. And I learned most of my long arming from Angela Walters' videos. Bought a panel when we went there the second time because it was closed the first time. They're not open on Sunday. Check the hours, just so you know. Her shop is small but mighty. Her quilts are hanging. It was amazing to see them in person. Her pictures are always so good, but to see it up close and personal, and it was just so cool to see how great of a quilter she really is, which we all knew she was, as well as a nice person. So I bought this year's challenge. It's a panel that you can follow weekly on YouTube, and it was so much fun to see all of the different challenge panels are there, as well as her own fabric line, and you can buy all that online. You don't have to go to the shop to purchase and support her. Also, check out her YouTube videos. You know, I haven't checked out a lot of podcasts and quilting YouTubers over the last few years. I just haven't had the ability or the mind space to do it, and I'm going to start doing that again. It's just, I missed it. And you know where we ended up? Our last stop, Missouri Star Quilt Company in Hamilton, Missouri. So we were so lucky. We went midweek. There were no buses there. And I knew that I was not able to do a 10-hour day there, walking and hitting all the quilt shops and touching all the fabric. Number one, my body is very frail. I have learned this, that the quilt show was very difficult. I spent 4 hours there on my feet, much of it taking a couple of breaks, but quilt shows don't have the seating areas inside, and I refused to get a scooter, a mobility scooter, and rent it for the day. I should have. I should have taken a walker and being able to lean on it and sit down when I needed, because I got extremely tired and I had a lot of pain. But I knew going into Missouri Star, the quilt show experience with my parents, who are in their late 70s, who outdid me that day. They could walk. They did all kinds of stuff because my parents don't have chronic health problems like my sister and I do. But that just made me know I had to go in with a game plan, and I wasn't going to see every single shop that Missouri Star owns in their town. Quilt Town, USA, they call it. And it is an extremely small town, so there's not a lot of amenities in the town. I'm going to say we stayed in Liberty, which was outside of Kansas City, Missouri. They have a lovely downtown area. Liberty, Missouri does. Great barbecue. We went to their brew pub. Can't remember the name. I would highly recommend staying in Liberty, which is about 45 minutes to an hour from Hamilton, just if you're going to go. So I'm often asked several questions about, how did you plan this trip? How did you tackle Missouri Star Quilt Company? That was a question Barb asked me on Instagram, so I'm going to answer. That is a two-part question. Number one, my husband is a very good planner, and we watch a lot of YouTube videos about places and destinations and trips. Missouri Star was no different about that. I watched several videos about Missouri Star and took a few tips about what I saw. There's a lot of walking, right? The stores are pretty big, but if you go when it's a busload of people, that's not going to be fun, in my opinion. I don't do well with lots of crowds. Standing is the worst thing, and standing in line is hard. There are parts of the Missouri Star Quilt Company that would be hard if you do have mobility issues or are in a wheelchair. Many of the shops are on a second story. There is a way to access it via an elevator, and I had to ask where it was. So this was my strategy going in. I stopped at the main store, the Missouri Star Quilt Company main shop, which is a sampler of all of their stores that they have. And I got a map when I was in there, and I looked at all of the things they had and decided at that first store how I wanted to approach this. I knew my body was only going to allow me a couple of hours, and I would be overwhelmed because there's a sensory overload in these stores because they're all themed. They're cute as a button. Every single one of them has fun things to look at and bolts and bolts and bolts of fabric. I love Missouri Star. Shopping online is fun. Their daily deals are great. But, if you have to know specifically what you want, and you're only going to do that by doing your homework before you go, right? You have to have a plan. So my plan was I needed to finish a low volume 9-patch quilt. I needed a couple of pinks and I needed some greens. And I knew if they had strawberry lemonade, that particular line matched the low volume florals that I had. And I needed about a yard for sashing and a border of a particular green. That shade was the perfect shade that Sherry and Chelsea from Moda did for whatever scraps. I have no idea. This was a UFO project. And then I thought I wanted to just look and see, what did they have of Lori Holt's? What did they have in Lori Holt yarn? Because they do have a yarn shop. What did they have in all kinds of things? I wanted to go to the modern shop, which I found incredibly disappointing. I hate all the colors there. They're browns and battery acid greens and things that I didn't like. What I liked shocked me. And this is why I made the statement at the beginning. I'm a contemporary quilter. I also know that I am working on a Fat Quarter Challenge for the Quilt Guild I just recently joined, Heart of the Pines, here in my hometown. It is a traditional quilt guild, and it's a real pretty pastel pinks and greens. And so I thought I might need to add some more greens to this and use my stash, because I don't know what kind of a quilt I'm going to make with it. I looked at the colors that I needed in my stash. I have lots and lots of colors, but I don't have very many pinks and purples. That is about exhausted. So here we go. There are 19 shops that Missouri Star owns, and about 16 of them, 15, 16, are quilt shops. I did not go to the Quilted Home because I thought I can buy those things online, and it's in the middle of a block near the retreat center that I didn't want to walk that much because my legs were tired and it was getting incredibly hot. Yeah, it was roasting the whole time we were gone. It was probably 80s to 100 every day we were there. And on the vacation, no matter where we were, except for the top of Pikes Peak, it was 47. And guess what? It snowed for a couple minutes. The thing about Missouri Star is that I didn't want to spend a lot of money. I had a budget. That's the word I'm looking for, budget. And in that budget, I wanted to spend less than $150 or to $200. And I spent $50 or $45 on the panel at Angela Walters. And I wasn't just going to go crazy buying fabric because I have a stash I'm trying to bust. And I just want to use the stash wisely. So let me tell you where I went in the strategy. So the main shop has next door to it, I'm looking at the map, the Mercantile and Floral shop. I was thinking maybe I shouldn't go to the Mercantile. I don't particularly like Mercantile, but then I realized that's where Lori Holt's fabric is, and all the fabric that are related to kind of the older fashioned look, even though Lori's aren't super old fashioned, but kind of your Civil War reproductions, your things that fall in traditional quilting. Mercantile was a cute shop, had all kinds of things to look at, quilts on display, antique sewing machines, and I did buy a yard of Lori Holt green, and I bought a tea towel there to either tat or crochet and edge for. I'm looking at my bag here, what I bought. And then I went to the Floral shop next door. Floral was chock full of every line of fabric that is floral themed. And here they had a tiny bit of strawberry lemonade and about a yard of a pink and the yard of the green that I needed for my low volume quilt. So that was a super win. I really enjoyed the floral shop and the mercantile. So then I walked down the block. So it was 3 stores in the block that the main shop was in. I walked down the block and across the street because that is where most of the stores that I wanted to go to were. Things like the yarn shop, the modern shop, the machine shed was there too. So I walked through all of those stores because a lot of them are adjoining. I bought a lot of Lori Holt chunky threads in the colors. They didn't have tons of it, but I bought the colors I didn't have. That shop was amazing. You could really spend a lot of money on some beautiful yarns. The good news is, again, you can buy all those yarns online if you know what you need and aren't a person that didn't know too much about yarn and you wanted to touch it, look at it, and talk to the very knowledgeable staff. And then I went down the block and I hit all of the stores that were in the in that particular block. It had things like, I got to look at the map again and get oriented. I went into the Santa Sewing Shop. I went into the licensed shed, the machine shed, which is all about sewing machines because that's where the elevator was to go upstairs. I looked at Licensed to Sew, the modern shop, kids and babies, Penny's quilt shop. I didn't really go in that one much, but all the ones that were in the middle of the block and connected, I walked through and looked at. I was kind of looking for sophisticated Halloween, which they did not have, but they had a whole room of nothing but Halloween, Christmas, Valentine's Day. You know, the baby shop was very cute. You can just go in and see everything nursery and young children. But I didn't need any Disney licensed fabric or any, superheroes, things like that. And I did find that I ended in their new shop, which is super cute. It has a Ella's soda shop, but it's their newest shop. It used to be a butcher shop. And it's so cute. What's its actual name? Oh man, I can't find the Fabric Market. That's what it's called, the Fabric Market. So you walk in and all the fabrics are like you would find in a old butcher shop. They're actually 10-inch squares and 5-inch squares cut up behind like glass case, like a meat counter, and you can buy fabric by the pound. It's a scrap bag, right? So I got 10-inch squares of pinks and purples. And then a lot of fabric was sold in the soda shop part, that they were rolls and sushis and little, they looked like honey buns and things like that, sold in cute little cups that looked like your fountain drinks or sushi rolls in little containers that looked like you were taking takeout. I also bought some Riley Blake thatched looking fabric in many teals. So lots of fun. They gave you some really nice bags to carry your things around in. They had some really lovely ideas and novelties, but let me give you my takeaway. Have a plan. I really felt it was helpful to know what I needed and not indiscriminately buy because I had a strict budget and I wasn't going to just start buying things. I did find a couple sales and I bought some solid fat quarters for like $1.75 a fat quarter, which I thought was a good deal in colors I needed. Again, I had some pinks, some greens, and purples. And I didn't go outside of that particular color palette. I think I would be frustrated to go there for this week's birthday bash because I found the staff wonderful, friendly, helpful, but slow. It took a bit to make your purchases. You had to give them a receipt or your cell phone or email numbers, and things so that they could log into the system to credit your quilter's cash, which, like, if you buy $100, you get $1, I think is how it goes. I don't think I would enjoy going with a quilt guild on a bus. I don't think I would enjoy Birthday Bash. Meeting Jenny Doan and her daughter Natalie and Misty, her daughter-in-law, would be fun, but it's not like a bucket list thing for me. So if you go with the Quilt Guild, know that you're going to be there all day, every day. They have a few places to sit and rest, but not a lot. It's usually hot even in the fall and hotter in the summer. Birthday Bash, they had parades and flea markets and dances, sock hop themed stuff, antique car parades. It looked like a lot of fun. Crowds and crowds of people. And I just don't know that I would find that fun to be in crowds of people. And if you really want to buy fabric and you really want to shop, it may not be that fun of an experience for you because you go there for the vibe. You go there for the fun. I was there a couple hours and I was physically tired, mentally drained, and I could just see where you just start walking like a zombie through it, just picking up crap you don't need, spending money you don't want to spend. That's how I think quilt show vending can be the same. I very rarely buy a lot of things at a quilt show. And in fact, I didn't see anything at the quilt show that I wanted to buy except a new long arm and frame. But I didn't because I don't need a new long arm. And my husband, when we got home, when he realized what the problem was and I couldn't fix it, he fixed it. So the long arm, FYI, seems to be all 100% in shape and the frame is holding. And I can buy the replacement parts. So what did I take away from the vacation is that I can do more physical things than I thought I could, but I still need rest. Elevation was hard. Oh my gosh, the elevation was hard on breathing on me. It was hard on my husband in places. And I'm going to say that Pikes Peak at 50% air, no bueno for me. We were up there about an hour. I sat, I meditated, I looked at the panoramic view. The EMT walked around. That's how serious it is, right? Altitude sickness is a real thing. We came back from high altitude and needed to rest in the evening, drink lots of water, and sleep. I love nature and being in it, and this just reinforced my love. I loved learning about new things. As we drove by historical places we wanted to learn about but didn't have time, I Googled it, read about it. We came home and watched some videos which filled the gap because we weren't able to stop at everything. Food wasn't always easy to come by. You would think in this day and age that finding food would be easy. It wasn't. Finding places to eat that I could eat was hard. We did eat at a lot of Mexican restaurants that were fabulous. The first half of the trip, second half of the trip, we were more in larger cities, and we did find a lot of food. What we wound up doing is eating a large breakfast. We went to Costco before we left, and we went to Costco in Colorado Springs, and we stocked up on things we could eat midday because, if you're in a national park, they don't have a restaurant in the middle of it. And not all of these national parks are near large towns that have a lot of amenities. The thing is, it was crowded everywhere we went, even in the middle of September. The national parks never seem to have an off season. It's probably even more crowded in the summer. And do your homework about time tickets, like I said. Go earlier in the day or in the evening. Going in the evening at Arches and Mesa Verde was magical. It was magical. The thing that I found that the only place that wasn't super crowded was one of the stops that I didn't mention. We went to the Olympic and Paralympic museum in Colorado Springs. That wasn't as crowded, but it did have a large group of senior citizens who were taking tours, and it was great. We all took turns. It was lovely. I learned so much about how vast our country really is and how wonderful it was to see new things and get out of my rut, my hometown. I remembered now how much I loved being in the desert. It was great. I think I might have to go back there again. The other thing, though, I did learn is as much as we looked at some places as possible retirement towns, that today I am not ready to leave the Midwest. But I could winter there. I could winter in northern New Mexico, the southern parts of Colorado, the Four Corners area. It was great. And people were lovely. It kind of restored my faith in humanity because where we went, people were absolutely lovely. Took turns. There wasn't the rudeness. It was not as much road rage. But as soon as we hit the Michigan border, bam, it was back. We even almost got into a fisticuffs at a gas station at home. No kidding. It was terrible. So, enough of that, but what am I working on? So, since I talked to you last, I have finished several things. I finished my Barnstar quilt in the 2 red colors that I bought from Corey Yoder. It's a great size. It will probably work I have an oversized door at work, and it'll be a lovely quilt to quilt up. I don't think it's more than 50 inches square. I also finished up the top for Fat Quarter Shop, the Star of Wonder Mystery Quilt. I did it in Lori Holt reds and teals. Oh my gosh, I had that in my stash. It was so much fun. I long-armed my Granny Square quilt that I started a year ago. Was it 2 years ago? I started it during the Granny Square along. When was that? My gosh, I think it was 2 years ago. And then it took me a year to finish the entire quilt. I did remember I Granny Square crocheted and I made into tiny pillows like Lori Holt does. But I bought pearl cotton and not her chunky thread and regretted that decision. And I did the Granny Square bookmark. That Granny Square quilt, I did it all over swirl as a kind of a warm-up and trying to get back into long arming. Got that quilted. I also quilted a hexagon bee-themed quilt that was yellow hexagons on a blue background with pretty honeycomb borders, and I did a couple different swirls and stitches on it. That was finished by binding it. I did quilt that, I think, last year. And I hung it up at work. It was fantastic. Then I was invited to go to a class with my friend who got me into the fused glass. And we made fused glass, kind of mosaic-ish bowls. So what you do is you take all of your little pieces and you put them on a circle blank, and then she fires them, and then you pick them up later. I've got a picture of the final project. It was the hardest thing. I didn't think that it was going to be hard, but as I was trimming up my pieces to go on the circle blank, but I couldn't even get them glued down for her because my brain turned inside out. The kids had an easy time. My friend's grandchildren and some of her daughters went. It was hard, but my bowl is coming this week. I've also started and been crocheting a whole bunch of chunky thread granny circles. That is Lori's crocheting project right now, and I have thoroughly enjoyed making these. They're a variation of a granny square, and you make the little with a circle in the middle, and they're about 4 inches. I love the chunky thread, and I bought a yarn winder to make little cakes. Super inexpensive, $15. My daughter bought it first and said, hey, this will work perfect. We don't do tons of knitting and crocheting. My daughter is the same, but sometimes you just need a yarn winder, because doing the trying to pull it off the little hanks, it gets tangled. And then that pretty much catches up the quilting and crocheting, and I realized it's fall. It is fall. It is fall. It is fall. So I got out some of my fall themed items. Last year I did those ornaments that were cross stitched in the tin tarts as a stitch along with Fat Quarter Shop. And then I remembered last year I started their free Halloween mystery stitch along, Happy Haunting. And I got it out and I'm like, the only thing I have left on it is behind the words Happy Haunting is a full moon. So I started stitching the full moon. Cross stitch is not as easy to do on the road. And so I took the crochet. I didn't do one square. So that brings me back to September. This week we went out and photographed the full moon. My husband tried doing some astrophotography at Arches National Park, and he really likes it with his cell phone. So we're looking into buying some like a telescope with a camera built in to try practicing that. And then I've got my pre-ordered things from Fat Quarter Shop came. The pre-order was Strawberry Lemonade Layer Cake by Sherry and Chelsea. It's a Moda, and it was so popular this summer that they sold out, and they considered the reprinting, and they did it. I love this fabric so much. So I love the fabric so much that I got the Family Favorites book when it came out. And I'm doing the quilt along that was announced. It is Brightly Sampler Quilt. That starts at the end of October, and more information is to come on that. But I've been blessed with Fat Quarter Shop asking me to quilt along with them. So I've made some purchases of fabric, and I am debating on how I exactly want to color this quilt. I'm not going to use the Laguna Sunrise sampler because I bought the Strawberry Lemonade. Now, I have some ideas on how I want to use that layer cake, but I'm not 100% sure. And so that's going to be a quilt along that we'll get more details as we go. And then I'm also starting my apple quilt that is in the Lori Holt book that was out last year. And I can't remember the name of the book. Oh my goodness, my brain. How could I forget the name of that book? Scrappiness is Happiness, right? And I am also getting the Prairie book to review from Fat Quarter Shop. So I'm very excited to review that. So I love Fat Quarter Shop so much. I enjoyed Missouri Star Quilt Company, but I think it's easier to shop at Fat Quarter Shop online. But both are great. But I am doing a lot of things for Fat Quarter Shop because I find it easy to surf their website, and I really enjoy the lives. And oh my Lord, the Strawberry Lemonade is so cute. I also have a lot of Lori Holt's books, her book and pre-cuts. So I'm kind of working my way through some of these things. And I saw in the new book, there are some really classic Lori Holt things that have been kind of like things that have been out before, but maybe the pattern was not available separate from a kit. There's a star in that book that I want to make with Lori Holt fabric. So I have some mercantile fabric and prairie fabric still. Now, the one fabric that I'd like to buy for a backing is the Hexagon Cheater print that is in the Strawberry Lemonade, I think, by Lori and Chelsea. So that, I think, will be my next purchase for a backing. But that about wraps up what I've been up to after my little hiatus. And I just want to say thanks, everybody, for following me along on my vacation online as I posted pictures, and for listening to all the things I learned about myself and about why we need to take vacations, right? It took us the first week to really start relaxing. And then the second week, it was just amazing to just really take in all that we were doing and to be very mindful and live in the present moment. So I really want to end this with saying, please, if you have vacation time, use it. It's so good for both your physical health and your mental health. And if you can do 2 weeks at a time, but you can't go anywhere, it's still great to be off from work for 2 whole weeks. It's so important. And that is just, it was a blessing that we were able to go. So I'm not sure what we're going to do next year for vacation. We're starting to plan that now. I do hope that we can get together with our children and grandchildren and do a little, like in one big Airbnb and some halfway point location. That would be fun. And the girls, the twins, just had a birthday, and I'm realizing, they're going to be in middle school in the next couple years, and I need to hurry up if we're going to do this, because they're going to start getting super busy. So that is our wrap on this week's podcast. Thank you, everybody, for following me on Instagram, Facebook. I'm really doing a couple of shorts for TikTok, but I think what I want to do is like more of short videos. So I will show some of the haul fabric this next week from Missouri Star and from Angela Walters Quilt Shop, and more short styled videos for now on YouTube. You can also see them in Reels, but I think it's easier to find all of them on YouTube. Thanks for those who have been supporting me by using the Fat Quarter Shop affiliate link. Thank you so much. And for the virtual cups of coffee that come in, you guys are rock stars. I want to thank you for listening, for my faithful listeners, and welcome to all those who this may be your first time. I hope you took away something that was maybe inspiring for you, and to go and take time for yourself today to be creative. Have a wonderful week, everyone.